So whenever the condition goes false, then it will shift to the else. So if this goes true, then it has to represent or print that x is greater than 10. As the name itself specifies, condition statement, there will be some condition which we have to satisfy in order to meet the criteria. It continues without stop until the iteration or the looping statement is satisfied. Hello everyone, I welcome you all to the second session of Unit 1, that's under Python programming. Yes, Unit 1 is all about introduction to the Python programming, and let me tell you, before this video we have already done two of the videos. The first one, day 0, where you'll get the glance of a complete subject in that, and Unit 1's first session is also there. So that is completely related to Python basics as well as OP concepts and the advantages, applications of Python programming language and all. So I request you to go back and check those videos too. Over here, my name is Deepa Kutnekar. I'm working as an assistant professor under Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram, Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. Let's move forward and see the agenda of today's session. In today's session, we will be discussing various conditional statements. We will first understand like what is a conditional statement and what are the various conditional statements that are included under Python programming language. Then we will also discuss looping statements, like we will understand why to go with looping statements and what are the different kinds of looping statements. Then after using conditional and looping statements, if we want to stop it, then what are the different statements that are available? So those are like break statements, continue statement, exit statement, as well as range functions and all these things. All right, let's move forward and let's start our session with conditional state. As the name itself specifies, condition statement, there will be some condition which we have to satisfy in order to meet the criteria. So those statements which are used to represent the condition, like yes, this is the condition and this are the thing that you have to do under this condition. So in this way, there will be certain conditions which they have to match when we move at the real world applications, isn't it? So with respect to that real world applications, we have to get back and understand like how to limit ourselves with the condition. So for that, we will be going with the condition statements. All right, now we did understand like there will be different conditions, but now when this condition has to work, so there should be some criteria for that, correct? So the criteria is none other than the condition will be checked for its correctness, or we can call it as a true or false statements. If the condition will be true, then only small portion of the code will be executed. If the condition is false, next part of the code will be executed. Like that, there will be some partitions, and with respect to that condition only, that part of code will be executed. So it is called as condition statement. Up next, let's see various types of condition statements, starting with if statement. So this is a basic conditional statement that is available for us with respect to any of the programming language. Now let's see what is a if statement is all about. So here what happens is it checks for a condition, and if it's true, only then that part of code will be executed. So that is if statement. Let's see an example for that. We have considered a variable x wherein we are assigning a value of 10 into that variable. All right. Okay. Up next, we are writing a conditional statement. Please note, this if is a conditional statement. Okay, what is that condition? We are writing that if x is greater than 5, so this is our condition. If x is greater than 5, only then I have to get a result printed. Thus, x is greater than 5 will be considered. So this is all about a if statement, that is a priority statement with respect to any of the programming language. Now let's move forward and understand, like there was a condition, and with respect to that condition, if and only if it is true, my small part of code will work. What if my condition is not proper or not satisfied. It means like it will be a false condition. So we had the code only for true condition. But what if we had a false condition statement? So for that, the next type of condition which is being evolved is none other than if else statement. So Python if else. Under if else condition, the conditional statement will be verified, and if it is true, then that part of code will be executed, and if it is false, then the next part of code will be executed. So by doing this, what happens is control flow in the code can be monitored in a very efficient way. So that's the major application, or we can say major advantage of this if else statement. So let's understand this in a better way by using a small example. So we have assigned a x with a value 3, all right. Next, we have considered a conditional statement where we are assigning x has greater than 5. Okay, that is my condition. Now we have to verify if my condition satisfies, then my first print statement will be executed. Next, if this condition goes false, okay, that is like, for example, here x is greater than 5, but my x is 3. So 3 is greater than 5. Is it true? No, it is false, correct? So whenever the condition goes false, then it will shift to the else. And under else, what is the statement? What is the part of code that has to be executed? It has to display a print message, that is, it will be displaying that x is less or equal to 5. So this is a simple example for if else statement. Now what we did is in a sequence, but if we have a code that has to run and the condition has to be checked, not in correct sequence, but complete program has to execute, correct? In the sense, we will be having a challenge of multiple conditions. At those time, can we use this if else? Yes, definitely we can use, but the program length will become more. Okay, so that's why we will be heading with the next type of condition statement, that is none other than elif statements. Elif statements allows you to check the multiple conditions. Please note here, it is responsible to verify multiple conditions, and at the same time it helps in executing different blocks of code. So that is the main advantage, or that is called as elif statements. Let's consider an example and see how is it possible. Again, we are starting with assigning a value of 5 into the variable x. Okay, then we are writing a condition, that is if x is greater than 5. Okay, it has to print that x is greater than 5. But if my number goes less than the provided condition, then definitely it will go to the else statement. Correct? If it is greater, yes, the statement is true, then this print will be done. If it is lesser, then it will consider as a false statement and it will print that x is lesser than 5. But what if we had a statement or a condition that is equal? So that is none other than x equal to 5. So at those conditions, we will be using or utilizing this elif statements. So you can observe here, we have written one more intermediate condition, that is elif is equal to 5. Then what it has to print? It has to print that x is equal to 5. So this is the main advantage of the elif statement. Alright, let's move forward and understand if elif else condition. If elif and else condition statement are used to verify multiple conditions and execute the different blocks of code simultaneously. Let's understand the process of this if, elif and else condition. Now, suppose let's consider an example of some statement which is true. So, the first statement has it is true, the if statement works and the other two statements will not be touched. Okay. Up next, if statement is false, then the elif condition are checked one by one, because again inside elif me might have multiple conditions too, correct? It might be a possibility. So that conditions will be checked, and if it is true, then that part of code will be executed and the remaining part of the code will be skipped. What if even the elif statement doesn't satisfy the condition whichever they have considered? Then the last option is none other than the else statement. So that else part of code will be executed. So this is the flow of this if, elif and else statement. Let's see an example. Yes, even here we have considered a value and that is been assigned to a variable x. All right. Now we have considered a simple if condition, that is if x is greater than 10. So if this goes true, then it has to represent or print that x is greater than 10. Up next, if my condition won't holds good, then it will go to elif condition and check the other conditions one by one. If there is only one condition, okay, it is verified. But if there is any multiple conditions, then that multiple conditions will be verified, and according to that, the display of message will be done. Okay. Now, even if the elif statement goes unsatisfied, then lastly, the else part of code will be executed. So this is a current program flow, these kind of conditional statements. Next type of condition statement that we have is none other than match case statement. Whenever we have multiple conditions, then we can't go alone with if or if else or elif, because the number of lines of code will goes on increasing. So that's why we need something wherein our part of code will also be minimized, as well as the same conditional execution will take place. So for that kind of statements, we will be heading with the next updated form of these conditional statements, that is none other than match case statements. So these statements are very similar to the switch statements of other languages. Let's move forward and understand an example with respect to this match case statements. So we have considered a value, that is a 5 with respect to x. We have defined x equals 5. Okay. Then we are defining a match statement. So we have written match x. All right. Now comes the case where we have multiple conditional statements. For example, we have considered case 1, wherein if case 1 goes true, then this statement has to be executed. If my case 1 is not satisfied, then I have to check with my next case and I have to verify whether it is satisfying the condition or not. If it is satisfying, then that part of code will be executed. All right. If even that part fails or it gives a false, then I have to go for the next part of case and I have to verify the condition of next case, and if it is a true, then under that what is the lines of code that has to be executed will be verified and it will be completed. So we can see here the case statements are minimizing the length of code. If we supposed to write these case statements by using if or if else, then for each case statements we might have used multiple if else statements, which will give a complex answer for us, correct? Which is not at all accepted in this AI generative era. So it's better to understand each and everything and to decide like which type of conditional statement goes well according to the application selected. All right, these are with respect to conditional statements. Next, let's move forward with the looping statements. Looping statements, as the name itself specifies, that there will be a looping things, or we can say repeated things, which has to take place with respect to the real world applications. And with respect to these repetitions, we need some standards, isn't it? So for that, we are heading with the looping statements. And under this looping statements also we have various kinds. Thus, let's see when this for loop is used. It is used when we need to process each item in a collection. Like there will be multiple sequences and each sequence has to be considered and processed. At that time, we will go with this for loop. Let's see a simple example for that. We have defined a looping statement that is none other than for I in range of 5. So we have defined a for loop with a range. Correct, right? There will be a different set of iteration. What is the iteration number? It is none other than 5. So whenever this goes right, then what happens? I want to print that I. Alright, let's see the output. The output will be a sequence, and we can also consider it has a list of numbers that is starting from 0 and it will end by 4, which gives a total range of 5, which is specified here within a for loop. Alright, let's move forward and understand the next type of loop, which is a while loop. Now, we were going with for loop when there was a fixed number of lists that has to be repeated or that has to be looped, correct? In some applications, there will be some loops where there will be no end at all. The process will be continuous. It has to carry forward the process continuously without any stop. At those conditions, what is the loop that we have to consider? Yes, there comes a new looping technique which is known as while loop. Thus, while loop repeats a block of code as long as the condition is true. So, it will be continuously repeating until my condition is valid or it is true. Also, as I told, it is only used whenever we are unknown of the iterations. Let's see an example for this while loop. We have considered the initial point, that is I equals 0. Then we are writing a looping statement, that is while I is less than 5. Up next, what it has to happen? It has to print that. But let me tell you what is here. But let me tell you, it goes continuously without any stop. So it will keep on repeated until we won't get any of the stop conditional statements or stop functions. So this is all about a simple while loop. Okay, as we understood different looping statements, now it's time to understand various very important functions or the statements. Yes, let's start with break statement. As the name itself says, it forms a break for few of the coding lines, because sometimes, as you know, whenever there is something like a while loop wherein it will be continuously executing, there is no stop at all. So in order to hold those looping statements or any of the conditions, we go with this break statements. As the name itself says, by having this break, that part of code will stop its execution and it moves forward with the next statements for execution. So that is none other than our break statement. Let's learn this with a simple example. So we have considered the initial point of I as I equals 0, and we have written a looping statement, that is while I is less than 5. What's next? Yes, we are writing a condition statement there, like we are considering if I is equal to 3. Thus, what happens here is the I iterates from 0 to 4. Next, if the I equal 3 statement will be verified, and when the I reaches 3, then what happens? It has to stop its execution because there is a break statement here. Next, what happens? The loop is exited immediately, skipping the remaining iterations if any. That's why the output will be 0, 1, 2. What about 4? Why 4 is not considered? Because here the loop itself will get exited. So this is how a simple break statement works. Alright, let's move forward with the continue statement. What happens here is whenever it is executing any line of code at that point of time, if we consider continue statement or any continue statement is defined at that point of time, it completely skips the rest of iterations if any is remaining, and it moves on to the next one in a loop. Let's consider an example for this. So we have defined a basic I as 0, then followed by we are defining a looping statement which is while I is less than 5. Okay. Up next, if this condition has to work, then what has to be executed? I plus 1, that is increment, has to be executed. Up next, it will check for a condition. What is the condition? If my I goes equal to 3, at that time, you might remember in previous slide, we had put a statement of break, which was completely exiting. But now by adding a continue statement without stop until the iteration or the looping statement is satisfied. We have considered a looping statement which is while I is less than 5. Further, we are considering this that I is equal or I is incremented to 1. Now, please note we are writing a conditional statement that if I is equal to 3, then what it has to do? It has to continue and print the following numbers. What is the output of this program? It is none other than it will start from 0 and it will give us a value of 1, 2, 4 and 5. Why not 0? Because just we are initializing with 0, but here we are checking it with plus 1. The 0 will be incremented. So it starts from 1. Great, right? And the 3 value will not be considered for output. Why? Because we have a condition here, isn't it? That's why 3 is skipped. So this is all about our continue statement and break statement. Up next, let's move with the functions. The functions are none other than reusable block of codes that considers or takes arguments as well as the written values. Function helps in organizing code, reducing repetitions and make the program more modular and maintainable. Alright, let's consider an example for this function wherein we will be using define greet of name. So this is a keyword which we have considered to define a function. Okay, it's done. Next, what we are doing, we are printing hello plus name. All done. After defining, we are heading with calling a function. How to call that function? We have considered greet of John. So you might see here, we have generalized here in the definition and we are specified under calling of a function. Okay, then the final output will be code followed by hello John. So this is a function. Up next, let's go and understand various kinds of functions. Don't be worried, you have a complete unit on these functions. That is none other than your upcoming unit, unit 2 will be all about these functions itself. Let's move forward and understand various type of functions that are range function as well as exit function. Range is a kind of function that is responsible for generating the sequence of numbers. Range, as the name itself says, there will be some sequence of numbers. Alright, let's consider an example for this. We are considering the looping statement that is for I in range of 5. What happens here is with respect to this example, it generates a sequence of number from 0 to 4. Next, the for loop, what we have considered here, will iterate over the sequence by assigning each number to I. Then the print statement will print the current number. So this is all about a range function. Let's move forward with the next type of function, that is exit function. As the name itself says, this exit statement is used to exit from the Python interpreter, or we can also consider this as a function which is utilized to stop the execution of the program. Alright, let's see an example for this. Here we can observe we have imported a library named SYS. Alright, under this we are executing the print statement which says hello. Alright, up next, the next statement is sys.exit, which is saying that this imported library has to exit now. So that's it, the functionality is done, you have to exit. So this is the meaning of the statement, and over here it will be stopped. But what do you think, this print statement will work or not? Exactly no. Whenever we have stopped our code here, then again there is no need to execute the rest part of the code, correct? Because we have got a exit function already. Yes, thus the output will be only hello. This is all about the function, that is exit function. This was all about today's session. I hope you might have cleared your doubts with respect to the conditional statement as well as looping statements, then finally the functions. So this was all about our today's session, and meet you up in the next session. Thank you.